What's going on, guys? Today we're going to be doing a full literary analysis on Beowulf. I know my literary analysis series is kind of boring, so I'm going to spice things up. Instead of doing this whole Christian and Norse reconversion thing, I'm going to do something good. Maybe hit you guys with a analysis on The Leviathan by Thomas Hobbes. It's a good one, long episode, but anyways, let's get into this. So, introduction. Beowulf is the oldest surviving epic poem written in Old English and one of the most important works of medieval European literature, alongside with my previous literary analysis of Snorri Sturluson's prose Edda. So it was Beowulf was composed sometime between the 8th century and early 11th centuries. The poem tells the story of the Geatish hero Beowulf, who defeats three monstrous adversaries: Grendel, Grendel's mother, and a dragon. Although the story is set in a pagan Scandinavian past, it was written down by a Christian poet, creating a unique fusion of Germanic heroic values and Christian moral perspectives. Oh, fuck. Sorry. At its core, Beowulf explores the nature of heroism, the pursuit of fame, the inevitability of death, like we saw in the previous literary analysis. This is a recurring theme. The tension between pagan and Christian worldviews, again, something we saw last video, and the fragility of human civilization through its complex characters, symbolism, and themes. The poem reveals a society struggling to reconcile its heroic past with a Christian understanding of history and morality. Historical and cultural context. For the record, we're going to be diving into some more Middle Eastern, more Eastern stuff, maybe do some literary analysis of some Islamic works in order to balance it out. And same with maybe throw some Central Asia, some China, some Japan at you guys. Keep it fresh. Anyways, the world of Beowulf reflects the warrior culture of the Anglo-Saxons. Society was organized around kings and their retainers, who exchanged loyalty and military service for treasure and protection. So pretty much feudalism. Important values included courage, loyalty, honor, generosity. Sorry, to draw back on that previous part, it's more of a tribal feudalism, not the modern feudalism we see in the High Middle Ages. Anyways, reputation, vengeance. A warrior's reputation was often considered more important than life itself. Since earthly life was viewed as temporary and uncertain, achieving lasting fame became a way to overcome mortality. And this is a common theme that we see in the rest of Europe. Warrior culture is a big deal in Germanic pagan culture, which is literally the entirety of Western Europe. The poem's famous opening immediately establishes the cultural emphasis. Listen, we have heard of the glory of the Spear Danes in days of old. The poem begins not with an individual, with a community's memory of heroic deeds, emphasizing the importance of fame and legacy. Again, sorry, I don't have the book with me, but if I were, I would pull out quotes and show you guys actual evidence. The book is also in Boulder, so I apologize for that. But yes, I did have to read Beowulf for my medieval European history class. So I do understand. I do have an understanding of it, and I have written an analysis of this before, and that's what I'm using right now. So the heroic ideal. So Beowulf as the perfect hero. Beowulf embodies the Anglo-Saxon heroic ideal. He possesses insane amount of strength, fearlessness, loyalty, generosity, and wisdom. Unlike many heroes, Beowulf fights not primarily for wealth, but for glory and honor. When he learns of Grendel's attacks on Heorot, he voluntarily travels across the sea to help Hrothgar. This demonstrates one of the central heroic values, service to others. His confidence borders on arrogance. I shall fulfill that purpose, prove myself with a proud deed, or meet my death. This statement reveals the heroic mindset: success and death are equally acceptable outcomes as long as honor is preserved. So it's like either the man's going to kill the elephant or the elephant's going to kill the man. No matter what, his poverty is going to end. So Heroism and reputation. So throughout the poem, reputation functions almost like immortality. Beowulf constantly references past achievements because identity is tied to remembered deeds. For example, before fighting Grendel, he recounts his victory over sea monsters. This practice reflects the Anglo-Saxon belief that a warrior lives on, through their stories. The pursuit of glory motivates nearly every heroic action in the poem. The three battles as stages of life. The poem is carefully structured around three major conflicts. Like we said earlier, the three monsters. Each battle represents a different stage of Beowulf's life and a different aspect of heroism. So Grendel, youthful heroism. Grendel symbolizes chaos, evil, and exclusion. He is described as a descendant of Cain, linking him to biblical sin. You must know Cain and Abel. So every night he attacks Heorot, the great hall that symbolizes civilization and community. The battle between Beowulf and Grendel therefore becomes hero versus monster, civilization versus chaos, and order versus disorder. Beowulf defeats Grendel using only his hands. This victory demonstrates youthful confidence and physical strength. The battle establishes Beowulf as the ideal warrior. Grendel's mother represents mature heroism. The second battle is darker and more psychologically complex. Unlike Grendel, his mother acts out of revenge and spite and anger and wrath. Her actions reflect the Germanic blood feud tradition. She therefore possesses motives that human audiences can understand. This complicates the moral picture. So the fight takes place underwater in a mysterious cave. Symbolically, Beowulf descends into a realm of darkness and death. So like hell. This resembles the archetypal hero's descent into the underworld. Unlike the fight with Grendel, Beowulf nearly loses. He survives only by discovering a giant sword forged by ancient beings. This battle emphasizes wisdom, perseverance, and divine assistance rather than brute strength. The dragon, so old age and mortality. So 50 years later, Beowulf has become the king. A dragon awakens after a thief steals a cup from his treasure hoard. So like the basic, knight fights the dragon type story. So the dragon represents death, time, fate, and the destruction of earthly achievements. Unlike Grendel, the dragon cannot truly be defeated without sacrifice. Beowulf kills it but suffers a mortal wound. The dragon battle symbolizes humanity's final struggle against death itself. Even the greatest hero cannot escape mortality. So paganism and Christianity, one of the most fascinating aspects of Beowulf is this blending of pagan and Christian ideas. The characters are pagans who lived before Christianity reached Scandinavia. The characters are pagans, just repeating myself. However, the narrator repeatedly interprets events through a Christian lens. So the pagan elements. So these values include fate or word. The Anglo-Saxons believed in fate, often called word. Beowulf declares that fate often saves an undoomed man. This suggests that human lives are governed by forces beyond individual control. So now, blood feud. So revenge drives much of the action. Grendel's mother seeks vengeance. Many historical references in the poem involve cycles of retaliation. Next is fame. The desire for earthly glory is central to the warrior ethos. Now moving on to the Christian elements. The narrator frequently attributes victories to God. Grendel is connected to Cain, the first murderer in the Bible. The flood that destroyed the giants is referenced, obviously, drawing symbolism from Noah's Ark. God is portrayed as the ultimate source of justice, and the poet therefore creates tension between pagan heroism and Christian humility. And this tension gives the poem much of, it creates a very complex atmosphere. So good kings and bad kings. So the poem repeatedly examines kingship. A ruler's effectiveness is measured not by conquest, but by his ability to protect and unite his people. So Hrothgar represents wisdom and generosity. He builds Heorot as a center of community. However, he is unable to stop Grendel. This demonstrates the limitation of age and political power. So Beowulf, as king, he becomes more thoughtful and responsible, and his final battle raises an important question: was he right to fight the dragon alone? Some people argue that his heroic individualism actually ends up endangering his own people, while others see his sacrifice as the highest form of kingship. The ambiguity is intentional. However, um, in the Bible, Jesus does state like the biggest form of love you can give to somebody is sacrificing yourself for them. So you can kind of see where I stand on that. So symbolism. So Heorot, the mead hall, the scene in the mead hall symbolizes civilization, community, and human achievement. Inside Heorot, people celebrate, feast, and tell stories. And Grendel's attacks represent threats to civilization itself. Next is the mirror. So this is the underwater layer. It symbolizes chaos, death, and the unconscious. Beowulf's descent into the mirror represents confrontation with deeper forms of evil, kind of like how we see in Dante's Inferno when Virgil descends down the 9 circles of hell. So next is the dragon's treasure. So the treasure symbolizes the futility of material wealth. After Beowulf dies, the treasure is buried with him. Nobody ends up benefiting from it. The wealth that was once inspired greed becomes now meaningless. So moving on, we have the theme. So the inevitability of death. Death is the poem's most important theme. Every victory is temporary. Every kingdom eventually falls. Even Beowulf cannot escape mortality, just like how we see in the previous work, the Prose Edda. The dragon battle demonstrates that death ultimately defeats every hero. Moving on, we have legacy and memory. So, although death is inevitable, memory does survive. The poem itself is evidence of this belief. The fact that we're talking about it is evidence of this belief. Beowulf dies, but his story remains, clearly. And the final image of warriors riding around his funeral mound ensures that his name will live on. On to some broader themes. Civilization versus chaos. So, the monster constantly threatens social order. Grendel attacks Heorot. Grendel's mother disrupts stability through her vengeance, and the dragon destroys entire communities. So the poem suggests that civilization is fragile and has a constant need to be defended. Limits of heroism. So Beowulf succeeds where others fail, yet he can't even conquer death. This realization transformed the poem from a simple adventure to a mediation on the human condition. So moving on, we're going to analyze the literary techniques of the poem. We have alliteration. Old English poetry does rely heavily on this. For example, actually forget that, I don't have an example, but a lot of the times the poet creates a rhythm and reinforces important ideas. Next is kennings. So kennings are a metaphorical compound of expressions, and they enrich the poem's imagery. Next is foreshadowing. So the poet frequently hints at future events. Moment of celebration often contain warnings about oncoming tragedies, and this reinforces the poem's awareness of mortality. Next is digression. So the poem does have a lot of side stories, and these stories include historical context. They compare characters, and they reinforce themes. So rather than distractions, they help place Beowulf's life within a broader historical framework. So to wrap everything up, Beowulf is far more than a tale of monster slaying. It is a profound mediation on heroism, mortality, leadership, and the struggle between order and chaos. Through Beowulf's victories over Grendel, Grendel's mother, and the dragon, the poem traces the arc of a human life. From youthful confidence to a mature responsibility, and finally to death at the same time, it explores the tension between the pagan pursuit of fame and the Christian understanding of divine providence and human inflation. The poem's enduring power comes from its recognition of a universal truth. Death cannot be defeated, but courage, honor, and the stories we leave behind can give meaning to our lives. In the end, Beowulf is not merely about a hero who kills monsters. It is about a humanity's struggle to create lasting significance in a world where all earthly things eventually pass away.